My name's Steve Swatton, and I'm going to try something a little bit different here. I'm kind of a bit tired of going up after a news release and just giving the spiel, and obviously having been an analyst in the past myself, I would look for what's not being said, not what is being said. I'm going to come clean here with my opinion of the copper market and where CopperCorp sits within, if you like, the Australian and the world context when it comes to a copper situation which is becoming a really tight market in where there's not enough resource being found. We're in a highly charged geopolitical situation. We have the majority of copper coming from relatively few countries, and some of those are not, if you like, the most optimal countries for international understanding and acceptance. And you know, if you throw one other level on top of that, most of the copper resources of the world come from very water impoverished areas too. So you've got political uncertainty, and Tasmania might not look like a place that is a mining jurisdiction, but I can tell you, like, I've worked for Rio Tinto early years, and I worked 10 years for BHP, where I was integrally involved in their copper exploration. I was the business development guy for the exploration department for a number of years based in Singapore, and we could go anywhere in the world and look at any deposit at any time. I spent most of my time in either Chile, Peru, or DRC, which makes sense. You look at it today, those are the countries where do most of the production. But we often overlooked places that are outside of our spectrum of influence, and anywhere that was geopolitically unstable, because at the time there was enough resources. But we did over time realize that there probably was going to be a shortage of copper. But at the time, you know, when there's a CEO's only in for 3 or 4 years and they're worried about, you know, their performance over that time, and obviously their structure of remittance is related to that, you tend to get drawn on a 3 to 5 year cycle. So what tends to happen is you look at front of you and say, what's my reserves? Okay, either we find something new in country B, or we build out where we are. So it's exactly what we did. We were looking at various locations around the world, but we realized that the best thing was what we had in BHP, and that was Escondida. So we actually built out, or the company built out the Escondida Norte deposit. And, you know, exploration had some success, but often we had success in countries where BHP didn't want to go. Well, we have a different geopolitical situation now. Geopolitically, it's a lot more unstable. There's a lot of uncertainty in the more common. When I was working there before, Peru was a great place to be. It still is a good place to be, don't get me wrong, but let's face it, there have been some knockbacks with some of the projects. You know, you take Panama, for example, as well, another country that supplies 2% of the world's copper. That's been taken out of production. And you have DRC, which is somewhere I spent a lot of time looking at, and you know, I was part of the group that looked at Tenge Fugurumi and all of these other assets down there, and we liked them, but it was very difficult on a political situation to get a head around politics. Also went to the Philippines, Indonesia, all of these other countries, and we kept going back to where we knew before: Australia, the first world countries, even Poland to some extent, trying to look for the next big copper resource. Well, we're in a different situation now. The world's demand for copper has driven and grown so much that we can't keep going back to the same old places and trying to put holes back into, you know, a pin cushion that's already got a million pins put into it. You have to go to other countries. So you start looking at the more, you know, less desirable countries, or you go back to the countries that are stable and say, okay, what might have we missed? And this is where Tasmania fits in. Not a lot of people know that in Tasmania there's 4 operating mines that drive the GDP of that state. The state is not a big state in Australia, but it's big enough, and it's so important to Tasmania that neither side of the political spectrum really mess with the mining situation. There's about 30,000 people employed in the mining industry in one very small part of northwest Tasmania, and everybody directly or indirectly is involved in the mining space. So any project that you bring in Tasmania is well supported by the local community and the local government. You're giving incentives as an exploration company to explore, and you are also, another added level, if you like, is that there is no First Nation issues that we're aware of that could impede development of any projects, which is a big thing if you look at some of the bigger porphyries that are in BC, in our home province here. So Tasmania is a place that's been overlooked, and the location that we are in at the Razorback property, which is just south of Mount Lyell, an asset that is owned by Sabanier, has been looked at in the past. But if you can imagine in the old days where you just went to the shiniest object around the world, which we did as BHP, Tasmania was overlooked. It's overlooked by many others as well. Yes, it was looked at in the 80s, 70s and 80s, but that's when you had the discoveries in South Australia, Olympic Dam, Prominent Hill, Carrapateena, and all of these other big ones. And you had, you know, if you like, you had the assets that were in Cloncurry district of Queensland and other parts. So there's always shinier objects to run for. Well, now we have this shortage of, you know, by 2030, they reckon, and depending on which outlet you look at, it's either 2 or 8 million tons of deficit. Where's it going to come from? It's going to come from either new discoveries, unlikely, or it's going to come from the smaller assets. And copper prices obviously will go up because there's a squeeze on the copper price, right? So it's going to be a situation where places that were overlooked, like Tasmania, will get a second crack. And yes, you know, some of the stuff that we're looking at now, we're going over old work that was done in the 80s, but we're also finding ourselves new areas that I think it's very rare that the old timers missed anything, but the old timers didn't, the grade was not high enough for them. They couldn't see the gold because it's very fine grained. But we have a situation where we have about, on the Razorback property, which is just south of Mount Lyell, we have maybe 4 or 5, 6 different prospects that have had relatively no exploration. We're currently drilling at Jukes, and we're trying to drill close enough that we can actually develop an inferred resource. And yes, it's not the size, scale of some of these other ones, Vicuña, Kamoa, Coca-Cola in DRC, but in itself, it will become important as the world supply of copper becomes squeezed. When you look at places like Australia, they only actually currently produce about 750,000 tons of copper. I mean, that's a drop in the ocean. They do have a lot of reserves, but they're deep, and that's mainly in Olympic Dam. Olympic Dam itself has 40% of Australia's copper supply. Now, the superannuation funds in Australia, they do have to invest in Australian-based industry products, and in our situation, mines. And it could be a case where, you know, a company like CopperCorp becomes extremely attractive simply because it's one of the only copper mines that is available to invest in. At the moment, our company is valued at $8 million. And yet we have copper in every hole that we drilled at Jukes. We've discovered copper, gold, and silver. Now, the grades are not quite economic levels at these stages, but if copper prices rise to above $6, where they are roughly now, $5.90, I think it was today, I mean, of course, anything that's of lower grade is going to become more valuable, or certainly will become of more interest to the mid-sized companies who are trying to get involved in the copper space. So, you know, if you come full circle, just because we found something that might not look today like it's valuable, you could bring an asset like Mount Lyell, or another Mount Lyell if you like. Now, Mount Lyell is 3 million tons, by the way, and 3 million ounces of gold, and a feasibility study which Sabanier just put out just last month. You know, they state that they're going to have a 23-year mine life and a 3 million tons per annum operation. That's not insignificant at all. It's going to be something that very significant to Tasmania, and it's a significant contributor to the amount that Australia itself produces. So, you have a situation where Tasmania might not be that small at all. It might not be a small production, and it's in a location that will permit mining. There's 100% renewable energy. There's infrastructure there. So I just think that CopperCorp is a company that has been overlooked. It has great potential going forward. We have a lot of targets in 2 different belts. And the other belt, the AMC, which all of our exploration projects are around the Savage River iron ore mine. The largest nuggets in Tasmania have been found there, gold nuggets, but never explained. There's a lot of copper showings, and we'll be having news releases in the future talking about some of these copper showings that we found. It's a tremendous location. So we've got 2 main belts. Synopsis is CopperCorp has 2 main belts. It has the AMC, which is roughly 100 kilometers either side of Savage River, with a bunch of copper showings along a very strong magnetic lineament. We're prosecuting that now. We already have one asset that we drilled in the past called Alpine, and we're going to be putting out some news on that in the short term, very positive news. But also, we got Razorback, which has got about 6 or 7 different locations that we're prosecuting right now. And it's just 10 kilometers south of a 120-year operating mine called Mount Lyell, which I've talked about before. Now this had a grade of 1.2% copper and 0.3 grams per ton gold. It's been a massive growing concern for the local community. And years ago, when Britain had an empire, it was the thing that sustained the empire. That and the Britannia mine were 2 of the largest mines in the British. It was a very large mine. It's on care and maintenance at the moment, but the feasibility study suggests that it can be mined again feasibly, and they haven't actually announced when it's going to reopen, but it could be particularly for Tasmania, it'll be a huge deal, and it's 100% supported by the local government and the local community. So, in summary, I just wanted to say that CopperCorp may only be an $8 million company at the moment, but we're certainly punching above our weight. And I look forward to bringing more news to your attention as we're doing more exploration around Razorback and as we're doing more exploration at AMC. Please check out our website and also contact me directly if you want to know anything more. Thank you very much.